Hello and welcome to Horseplayers Happy Hour, brought to you by the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you at Walt and Whitman Brewing Company right here in Saratoga Springs. Very happy to be joined by my good friend and colleague wearing the appropriate hat, given that it is opening night of the NFL season, among other things. Matt Bernier, welcome to Horseplayers Happy Hour. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Pete. You know, it felt like a long shot to be in a position like this where there was going to be professional football played at any point this year. And who knows, we still have a long way to go, but it seems like everything's going to go off without a hitch tonight anyway in Kansas City. So very much looking forward to that. And then, like you say, Pats and everyone else open up on Sunday afternoon. So looking forward to seeing what happens, and especially for selfish reasons, the new look Patriots with Cam Newton.
That's right. Now, this will be dated by the time most people are listening to this as a podcast, but I can't resist asking, you have an opinion in this football game tonight?
I mean, I think it's just one of those things where everything is lining up for a team like Kansas City with all the weapons that they have. Everyone is effectively back from last year's team. I don't have any real reason to go against them in a position like this. I get it. It's kind of the unpopular, the sort of chalky pick in the grand scheme of things. But simply put, I just think they're the best team all around. So not even just talking about tonight against Houston, but going forward, I really don't have any reason to think that they're not going to be in the AFC Championship game once again, if not outright in the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl.
It doesn't sound crazy when you say it like that. So let's set the scene here. Horseplayers Happy Hour. We do these every Thursday. We have this new fun contest format where we've been doing 6 races. The contest part starts before we come on the air. The contest benefits Thoroughbred Aftercare. We have the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, tbaftercare.com. They're one of our beneficiaries. The other, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, trfinc.org/players. Both these organizations doing critical work in finding home for racehorses when their racing days are over. All of the money for the contest that is sort of typically happening in the background of this show, all the money raised, the VIG, if you will, goes to these two organizations. We've raised well over $5,000 since these started back in March. It's a number I'm proud of and looking to keep growing. Of course, you can also go to their web pages and donate directly to these important causes. This week, a little bit different. We have Kentucky Downs was our contest track, and we're just sneaking on here to get the last race of the contest. So today we had around 50 people play. The top 5 are going to win entries into Saturday's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier. The BCBC, as it's known, an event where our own Matt Bernier has had success in the past, pretty much regarded as the greatest betting contest, the greatest handicapping contest / betting contest that there is out there. A fantastic thing to get involved in. If you bet big money, you'll want to be betting it on the Breeders' Cup in the context of this contest because you get extra money back via the prize pool. There you have the leaderboard as it stands. Our last race is about to go. Now, oddly, our simulcast feeds right now, we do not have pictures for Kentucky Downs, but I will give you, Matt, I know you have an opinion in this race. I want to give you a chance to give that opinion. Hopefully, folks will have an opportunity to get their bets in before they pop here at Kentucky Downs. What did you like in this spot?
Well, and first things first, I wonder if they're going to wait to try to get it back, because now we have sort of the old school win odds listed up here, and it just looked like maybe their feed went down for a bit. I wonder if they're going to wait to try to get the picture back. Anyway, regardless.
I'll look online. I'll look on Twitter while you give your opinion of this race.
I like the big number in here. I like the 12. Ask Bailey. Now, let's be honest as well, or I can be honest. Kentucky Downs has always been a very difficult place for me as far as picking winners, because for one reason or another, I just have a difficult time trying to determine what form is going to hold up there and who's going to run well. It's an undulating turf course for those of you that are unfamiliar with it, very much a European style as opposed to what we have as sort of our stereotypical turf courses here. But Ask Bailey, to me, is the kind of horse where you take a look at the PPs. The 3 times she's run on ground that is less than firm have been kind of her 3 bombs. And you take a look at her firm turf going, she's done quite well. And that run 2 starts back off of a very lengthy layoff up at Canterbury Park. I thought visually was really strong. She never looked like a loser. I can understand anyone that looks at that field and says she didn't beat anything, and this is going to be a world of a different animal, a horse of a different color, if you will. But you're going to get paid. And at 27-1, I'm willing to find out if maybe she is visually, she's going to check the box to what I think she could be. And who knows, maybe she'll run up the track. I have no idea. We'll find out. Hopefully we'll be able to see the race, but that's where I went over the 12. Ask Bailey in here. She's 27-1.
It's a compelling case. You still have an opportunity to get your wagers down. As hot as Matt Bernier has been, you don't want to be ignoring his advice right about now, folks. I'm multitasking and getting some money down myself. Now, I have not found any information. I was also, in addition to getting a wager down, looking that whole time to see if we could figure out what in the heck is going on with the simulcast feed. We'll hopefully get that straightened out. One thing we can do, we can revisit that leaderboard. We can tell you who's done what so far. The website, I should have mentioned this before, where you want to play and effectively donate to these charities while competing for a seat to the greatest handicapping contest there is, horseplayers.com. You go there, they've got action every day, including on Thursdays, our Horseplayers Happy Hour. We'll be back. I don't know what we'll do next Thursday. I don't think New York doesn't start until
Friday, I think.
Yeah, next Friday. So
yeah.
We'll come up with another, we'll see what's racing. We'll come up with something else fun for next Thursday, and then we'll probably go back to NYRA, something NYRA-centric. We love the idea of sort of rekindling, there's a couple of different angles at play here. We've got a 6-pack for Happy Hour, which I like. We got the 6 races, and then it's also harkening back to the old $2 pick 6 that used to be on races 3 through 8, typically in New York, culminating with the feature. But let's take a quick look at the leaderboard as of right now. It's a scrum, and there's a bunch of different horses covered. A lot can still happen here with one race to go. Current leader Balasundaram Sridhar with 36.20. That makes it a tie with William Roth in second, Charlie Witt in third, Wendy Long, accomplished contest player, in fourth, and right now in the fifth and final qualifying spot for the moment, GT Nixon. So we'll see how this shakes up with this last race over at Kentucky Downs. And we'll see if we can figure out what's happening. I'm still seeing the old school win odds screen, and yes, you're still getting a very nice price on your runner. One thing we can do too, we can maybe see if the is that win total on the old school odds screen. There's the
it's
win
going up.
Number. It is going up, so they have.
They have not broke, not yet.
So we'll wait and see. Meanwhile, Matt, why don't we take a look back? Folks have had the opportunity to reflect for a few days about this year's Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. I know you've covered this elsewhere to some degree, but I want to hear the story. I want to give you a chance to walk us through your fantastic pick in the Kentucky Oaks. Where were you? Remind us again. We'll play a little Red Board rewind on here. Remind us the case for She Dares the Devil, and then take us through the experience of your watching what can only be described as a phenomenal pick.
Yeah, there were a number of folks who were asking how, even post race, they said, I went back through the past performances. I can't see it. What's the case? And I said, it's sort of a good example of you need to use all tools available, where if you were just a numbers player, depending on what figures you used, she was very difficult to make. She's not fast enough. And if you're someone who just looks at tape, maybe you were going to be a little bit more inclined to look at a horse like her and say, you know what, she does everything professionally. She loves the racetrack, the way she moves, X, Y, and Z. But my bigger point there kind of was you need to use every tool that you have available and just sort of put it all together and try to come up with some sort of a conclusion. I had seen this filly early on. I tried to actually make my future bet in February. I didn't get it in until the end of March after she had run a couple more times in graded stakes company. But the idea was, I think, especially with the early 3-year-olds or even late 2-year-olds, looking for the horses who move well at 2 turns, show plenty of gusto. You don't want a horse who looks like they're getting a little bit tired, especially early on. I recognize you can continue to develop as time goes by, but you need to show a little bit of desire to want to go longer, and it'll be interesting. We can talk about that when we get into the Queen's Plate in a little bit here. But so a long-winded way of saying I liked everything I had seen. I liked the connections that she was going out for. She was clearly a horse that everyone involved had thought rather highly of. She initially was out in Southern California, ran in graded stakes early as a 2-year-old. And it was one of those instances where when the race was drawn, I looked at it and said, I have zero faith in the way that they've handled Gamine. I understand, and there are people that we know and love. all around saying that she's just the best horse in the race. And that, frankly, that may actually be the case. I think talent-wise, you can say that she's the most talented horse in the race. But if you are Bob Baffert and company, and this was another piece I brought up, you have to try to think like the connections. Why would you wait after that one time she went 2 turns and nearly lost a speech? You have made it a point to run her at 1 turn. There's a reason there that you haven't gone and stretched her out, and you've waited for this instance. And the way that she was ridden, I feel like if they had no concern about the distance, they would have gone 46-4 to the half as opposed to 47-4 and brought everyone else into the race. And even having said that, she didn't run bad. I think a lot of people are just kind of glossing over Gamine, saying she can't do it. Well, she still ran a 95 buyer or whatever it was. It's not like she was a hopeless long shot or no show. And I just thought She Dares the Devil was going to work at a really nice trip. That it all, for the most part, worked out the way that I thought it would. And I was just happy to see her not only find the way that she did, but when Swiss Skydiver came up to her on the outside with about, let's call it just inside a quarter mile to go, for her to not only go on with it, but turn away a really talented racehorse. And I know some people were saying if you reverse the trip between She Dares the Devil and Swiss Skydiver, perhaps there's a difference and maybe Swiss Skydiver wins. I can understand that logic. I don't agree with it because I feel like Swiss Skydiver had every opportunity to go by and she didn't do it. And the thing that was most intriguing to me about She Dares the Devil, after the race, she galloped out about a half mile in front of everybody else. And it makes me wonder. And then when you go in to look at some of the speed figures, she all of a sudden, and I'm not just saying it because I'm a fan and I love her, she becomes kind of compelling come Breeders' Cup Distaff time. I have no idea if she'll be able to handle Keeneland and older horses. But I'll tell you what, from a numbers standpoint, this goes back to sort of you need to put it all together. She's really kind of right there among some of the horses who project to be shorter prices than her. So it was a great sort of day for me. Obviously, I was here right at this computer setup, watching the race and turning for home. I texted my buddy and I go, just give us a thrill. Give me a chance. That's all I want at the top of the lane. I don't want to drop an anchor. And when I saw her finding, that's when I started losing my mind. My wife, she came over and knocked on the door about 20 minutes later. She goes, "Everything all right?" I go, "Yeah, we're good. We're good." So it was fun.
Yes, horse players, significant others are known for that. Everything okay in there? What's going on? And I was wondering if it was as we talked recently with Matt Vagvolgi on one of the other shows about horses that get you out of your chair. I imagine you were out of your chair pretty early on. It was pretty clear she was firing a big one pretty much from the jump.
And Pete, I think you can also know where I'm coming from with this. And I've said, look, money is great. It's always nice to win. But having a conviction and an opinion for so long and having it come to fruition, those are the things I remember, those kind of picks and plays and opinions much more than the money that's been won and all that kind of stuff. It's more about, I hate to say it, it's more about ego, where you look at it and you say, you know what, damn it, I was right. And that's what I got more joy out of on Friday afternoon than whatever was returned.
I agree. In these big grade 1 races, when you do what we do, the ability to be right, especially for so long at such a price, it is worth it's the money is worth a lot, but there's something that's worth more than money too. And I was very vicariously excited for you for getting to experience that. And when you talk about that ego, it reminds me of I'm receiving word right now, by the way, that there's a power outage.
Oh, geez.
So that's what's going on there. We'll see. Here we thought we were going to be off the air before the last contest race. Now we could be off the air before it ends. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. Can't hang out. Can't hang out too long. It may be a very unusual edition of the show where we have 0 contest races, but we'll see what happens. You talked about the ego element. It's one of the reasons why people love handicapping contests. Even if you're just playing in a little feeder over on horseplayers.com, there's something really cool and fun about seeing your name rise up the leaderboard, maybe against somebody you know, seeing yourself beat a Matt Bernier or Jonathan Kinchin. It's a fun experience. And I did want to mention about a handicapping contest coming up that our pals at the Breeders' Cup are in league with, the Kentucky Downs Turf Handicapping Challenge. This is going to be 2 one-day online handicapping contests taking place through both ExpressBet and TVG. New Jersey players are available or are able to play through 4NJ Bets as well. A $1,000 contest will take place on Sunday, September 13th and then there'll be a $600 contest on Wednesday, September 16th. So fairly standard rules for folks who are used to playing in live bankroll handicapping contests. You got to preload your accounts. You can find plenty more information about this over at the Breeders' Cup website. We'll send out a link as well. Make sure people get a chance to check this all out. But that's two interesting opportunities to participate in live bankroll play. Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats will be part of that prize pool. And, of course, you can also do what the folks playing in this contest today were doing and try to qualify for your BCBC seat over at horseplayers.com. Do these contests draw your interest, Matt? A chance you might be playing in one of these?
There's a chance I may try to feed into one of them, but kind of, as I said at the top, is as awesome as everything at Kentucky Downs is with the takeout and the incredible. I enjoy watching the racing there. I generally don't know what the heck's going on, but I enjoy watching it. It's a contest. If I were to get in, I would have very low expectations. But I'm kind of at a point now where there are only a handful of events between now and Breeders' Cup time that I'm even mildly intrigued with as far as looking to try to get my way into. And I would strongly encourage this, especially to folks that have never played in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. It's at Keeneland this year. I would encourage you to go back and take a look and see how things typically play in the fall at Keeneland. Go back to the Breeders' Cup in 2015. That's where I'm starting to kind of shift my attention to. Go back, kind of do the homework to see if you can glean any sort of information about what you should be looking for and what you shouldn't be looking for, what tracks horses who do well at Keeneland are coming from. We've seen in the past horses that came from Kentucky Downs would do well at Keeneland for whatever reason. I think there's some sort of signal that can be gained by going back and doing your due diligence, and especially for people that have never played either A, in that contest, or B, for that level of money, those sort of stakes. I'd encourage you to just make sure that you are fully prepped before you go into it, because it can get a little overwhelming if you're not prepared.
Let's talk about what those preparations can entail. Are you talking about things like track profiles, like race histories of which type of races typically yield prices which are more formful? I agree. This is a fantastic time to start looking ahead. Breeders' Cup not that far away. Greatest wagering event of the year for horse players, and I love the idea of starting to do homework on it. But let's talk a few specifics, Matt. What kinds of things are you looking at exactly right now?
Yeah, very much along the lines of some sort of a track profile. So go through, and the beautiful thing is you can find charts, whether it's on Equibase or Daily Racing Form or wherever you look at your information. You can find charts that go back years and years and years. And it's an interesting piece with it being at a place like Keeneland, where you have the spring meet versus the fall meet. And obviously this year is very, very unique in that we had the summer meet for that 5-day stretch as opposed to the spring meeting. But trying to see where horses are typically positioned at certain distances, where they tend to sort of average out as far as winners are concerned. And to your point, and I did this especially the first year that I played in the BCBC, I would go through I think I only went through about 3 years worth, but I went through each of the races on Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday to see where kind of chaos ensued and try to plot accordingly, because I think so many people come Breeders' Cup time get so tied into the idea of, I can get that 30-1 shot that really makes things. And you certainly can. But it's also, don't lose sight of the fact that you can find very logical winners that pay $14 to $20 somewhere in there. And in an event like the BCBC, betting $1,000 on an 8-1 shot is almost as valuable, if not more so, than just trying to chase the wild exacta or the wild trifecta that may or may not come in. So that was the first thing I did the first year I played, was go through the past 3 years, try to see some of the races that were perhaps a little bit more formful as opposed to the ones where it just seemed like it was kind of chaos, and also trying to figure out what sort of running style was going to be most conducive to that track and the way that the races are run. And the last thing I'll say is too, and it's why I brought up the Kentucky Downs Keeneland piece. I've been saying it for months. Keeneland is a quirky racetrack, both the main track and the turf. There are some horses who seemingly will produce their effort anywhere, but then they'll get to Lexington, and for whatever reason, they just don't get over the track as well. And specifically that turf course, I would strongly encourage folks to go through and see I would say either A, upgrade horses who have proven themselves over the turf course. It was part of the reason I love Stephanie's Kitten back in 2015, because early on as a 2-year-old, she really showed that she could handle that turf course, but also see where the horses come from, that they produce good efforts, whether it is Kentucky Downs, whether it's Churchill Downs, whether it's Belmont Park, wherever it may be. Try to figure out some sort of path using that kind of information as well, because the more information you have, the better for an event like this.
Yeah, it's great points all the way around. Let's look back a little bit more, Matt, at last weekend. We talked about She Dares the Devil scoring that 101 by her speed figure in the Kentucky Oaks. How about the big one? Authentic upsets the story so many of us were looking for with the 105 by her speed figure in the Kentucky Derby. I'll start off with this one. Do you feel like Tiz the Law ran his race in the Kentucky Derby? I'll ask it that way.
I don't think it was his A effort. I think it was probably his A- or his B+ effort. Now, if you want to call that the regression from the Travers, that's entirely your call. It's not as though he bounced to the moon. You know, I mean, he still ran second to a really talented racehorse, a horse who has always shown that there is ability there, there is talent there. If Tiz the Law showed up with his absolute best, I think he probably would have won the race. But I think on Saturday, I think he was defeated by a better horse, and I don't want it to become a matter of Tiz the Law didn't run. I want it to be, let's acknowledge that Authentic. You look at the fractions, the way that race was run, he earned that thing.
I think that's a very good way to put it, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from him. I just keep going back and forth. Speaking with Mike Maloney the other day, he made the point about him possibly having that trouble on the first turn when it did appear that maybe Paco Lopez, after potentially targeting him out of the gate and making contact with Honor AP, might have gone after him again and just got him a little bit lit up. And my first thought on the race was that he fired his shot and it just wasn't his day. He found one better on the day. But then I found myself wanting to conjure a trip excuse for him and think of reasons to potentially reverse form with Authentic the next time. And I think where I eventually come down on it is it's going to depend for me on where the next time is. It seems pretty clear from what we've seen so far, and maybe there's been news on this in the last 24 hours that I haven't seen with just basically studying Woodbine all the time, but it feels to me like if the Preakness ended up being next on the dance card, that would be a case of owner pick the spot. It did seem like Barclay Tagg was fairly heavily leaning towards waiting and taking another crack in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And based on that, I think I'd be a little bit cynical about his chances in the Preakness of getting the best of Authentic, but considerably more optimistic if he waited and pointed and took his shot in the Breeders' Cup Classic. What do you think? Do you think wherever they reoppose the next time, do you think Tiz the Law has a good chance of reversing that form with Authentic?
Yeah, certainly. Again, it would have been one thing if in the Derby he was a complete no-show, a complete flop, and I don't feel like really he did anything wrong. Honestly, he was a little bit quirky with his lead change at the top of the lane, but I mean, I'm really being nitpicky there. I thought Manny rode a perfectly fine race. He did everything that I think you're supposed to do on a horse who's 3 to 5. You're not supposed to get him into any kind of trouble, keep him parked out in the clear. It was the American Pharoah trip, and unfortunately he just couldn't go by. I guess in that instance back in 2015, Authentic would have been the role of firing line. Instead, ultimately Pharoah went and got him, and Tiz the Law just couldn't do that on Saturday. I think it's an interesting sort of idea though going forward about the Preakness all of a sudden, and I said it months ago that I felt like the Preakness was going to be the giant loser of this entire thing, because given the timing of it all, if you didn't have a Triple Crown on the line, what's the likelihood that you get any of the Derby horses to run there given the vicinity to the Breeders' Cup Classic? And then all of a sudden, it sounds like the Preakness might be the best race of the three. So, if they all line up, if Authentic goes, if Art Collector, which it sounds like he's going to be fine and good to go, if Tiz the Law shows up in a spot like that, the horses from the Jim Dandy possibly coming down. There are so many horses that I guess, and maybe I'll just take the L on that one, I didn't think the Preakness would be in play. I figured they all would have just sort of been targeting the Breeders' Cup given the timing. It could potentially end up being a tremendous race. The other piece to the equation, I said it when I was on ABR on Saturday afternoon after the race, and especially if Authentic goes and Tiz the Law doesn't. I think Authentic right now is the 3-year-old champion, which sounds wild because that would have seemed so silly to say Friday night. But if Authentic goes to the Preakness and wins, and Tiz the Law bypasses that, he has to win the Classic in order to be 3-year-old champion, in my opinion. I mean, what would the
Authentic? I'd say he has to beat Authentic in the Classic.
You think so?
I think a good second could still get him there, because I think what the compelling case is for me right now for Authentic is you put his grade ones up against Tiz the Law's grade ones, and they're it's a little bit pushy, except for the fact that he'd have the head-to-head. So I feel like if he could, even if he were to run second to maximum security, but with Authentic behind him, I personally would be much more tilted towards Tiz if he could even out that mark in the head-to-heads. You don't see it that way?
Well, is that with the acknowledgement? Is that saying, what if Authentic wins the Preakness? You still believe that?
I was still thinking if he won the Preakness and Tiz the Law beat him. So what would it be? So then you'd have
I tell you what, that would be interesting.
Because you'd have Florida Derby, Belmont, Travers
versus Derby, Preakness, Haskell. I mean, that would be unprecedented for a horse with those 3 races to not get it.
But I mean, I think you could say the same about the other 3. I mean, it's 3 important grade 1s versus 3 important grade 1s. Like for me, I'm giving I guess maybe I'm being a little disrespectful of the Haskell by giving the Travers. Maybe I'm being a homer sitting here in Saratoga, giving it a little bit of a grade 1 plus kind of a feel, and maybe that's not fair. But at that point, you're really looking at, I mean, a de facto. Well, I don't know. It also depends on what the margin is between the two in the Classic. It's all going to come down to the Classic. I think we can agree.
Yeah,
and that's kind of fantastic. So I like that.
The only other thing I would say about that is, to me, the big winner from this past weekend is the Breeders' Cup Classic, because now there were many folks that perhaps maybe looked at Authentic either A as a distance issue or B, maybe he was a notch below. And I think both of those were dispelled on Saturday. And now if you add him to the mix, including Tiz the Law, including a horse like Improbable, Tom's d'Etat, who am I missing here? Maximum Security, By My Standards. If any of the females show up, whether it's Midnight Bisou or Monomoy Girl, I mean, all of a sudden that Breeders' Cup Classic, your favorite's going to be 3-1.
Yeah, it's going to be insane. If everybody shows up, it's going to be insane. And it could also be another reason you mentioned about the Preakness. It is wild how events have conspired to make it so much more interesting than you or I would have guessed it would have been. There's also the fact that that's now a win in your in race for the Breeders' Cup Classic to really potentially pad out that field and give us, even if we have 4 or 5 big names, people aren't going to be scared. I think they're going to still be running and saying, hey, if we're going to get into the Classic, we're going to have to take we might have to take our shot here. I think that's going to be loaded, and the Classic itself is going to be just a particularly fascinating renewal. Let's hope everybody stays on track and we get this showdown. I mean, sometimes I feel like you get at least a little bit of a deep breath after Saratoga. This year, the way the racing calendar goes, there's no deep breaths. This is going to be action-packed stuff. There's going to be stuff for us horse racing fans every single weekend between now and then. We have a question that just came in, and it's about Honor AP, and I'm glad this one came to the fore. This is a question from Alex about Honor AP, and you can see it there on the screen. With his trip, if he had any chance to win. And I think you could make 2 cases for Honor AP in the race. One, I mean, and where do you stand on this, Matt? But I think it's pretty clear his rider was more interested in riding. I think it's pretty clear that New York Traffic and who Paco was riding in the race was more interested in riding other horses in the race than his own. And I believe that it had an impact on the outcome. And I believe that it was not a tactical decision by Mike Smith to be that far back on Honor AP. I think the horse had the wind knocked out of him because he got absolutely smacked coming out of the gate. Now, I know reasonable people can disagree on this. I have positioned it as I thought that there was clear intent in this happening. But let's put that question aside, and we'll come back to it and stick with the question that Alex asked. Between the trip that Honor AP had and how far back he was early, how wide he was around the turn, do you think you can make a case that he could have won the race?
Well, so I believe it was Marshall Graham who put out the sort of, when you combine the ground loss with how they were running, the horse that actually ran the mile and a quarter the fastest was Honor AP. The thing that I'm struggling with this horse is I don't know how naturally fast he is early. And I still, whether you believe he was cleaned out at the start of the Derby or not, whether you believe he was cleaned out, he certainly was cleaned out at the start of the Shared Belief. Going back to that Santa Anita Derby, I don't know how much early speed this horse naturally has. Maybe he has a tremendous amount, but to me, he gives off the impression of, in an honestly run mile and a quarter race with a half in 46 and a piece, I just don't see him being in a position like 'Tis the Law. I feel like he's more of a mid-pack, get that engine warmed up, and I'm going to be finishing. It's just a matter of how far ahead are the other folks that are starting in front of me. And I don't know if that's being unkind to a horse like this. It's just me being honest that I don't know how naturally fast he is early on. So I guess my answer to that question would be no. I made the sort of comparison on my show the other day, and I don't know if, I'm sure some people are going to view this as disrespect, but it's not, because I thought Tonalist was a very, very talented horse. I get Tonalist vibes, where if it's purely a brilliance race, he's not going to beat some of these horses, because he just doesn't, to me, he doesn't have that brilliance early on. He may be able to run all day, but boy, if you've got to make up 7 lengths turning for home against a Maximum Security or a Tom's d'Etat, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. And hopefully we'll find out at some point with a clean break from him. But that's a lingering question for me.
It's interesting. I do think he has a little bit more speed than he's shown with these breaks in the last two. This last one, especially, that I thought was no fault of his. I think he could be really, those 7 lengths can become not as big a deal if you've got talented speed horses going hammer and tongs early. The Breeders' Cup Classic at the mile and a quarter, with all that, with potential horses with that running style, if they all show up, that could be a race where he shines. So I think he would have been a lot closer. I don't think he would have won the Derby, but I do think there could be a big race a la Tonalist with his name on it if everything comes correct for him. And hopefully, if and when it does happen, he'll be a nice bettable price.
PTF, you know who to me the most fascinating horse coming out of this past weekend going forward is? It's a horse that I picked him second in the Derby. He didn't get to run, unfortunately. I hate everything he does mechanically, but there's something now about Art Collector where he's got that gear early on. He can be close to the pace. We know he's going to be fresh, super fresh, where we'll find out how much of the starch was taken out of a horse like Authentic with that big effort, on Saturday afternoon, a quick turnaround in 4 weeks, and then theoretically another quick turnaround 4 weeks later for the Breeders' Cup for the Classic. Art Collector is going to arguably need the Preakness to be at his best. And going back to my earlier point about Keeneland being kind of a horse for course type of deal, he clearly loves that racetrack. He to me, all of a sudden becomes very, very interesting. He's not fast enough right now, but that doesn't mean that we haven't seen him since July. He could have very easily taken that step forward, that natural maturation physically. And if that's the case, he becomes very interesting to me. That's all I'm saying.
It's a fascinating division, and you can really make cases for those 4 runners to be able to end up. I'm not saying they're going to be able to win the 3-year-old honor with
right.
What Authentic and 'Tis the Law have in the bag, but they both have the potential at the end of the season to be like, well, that could be the best 3-year-old right now.
Certainly.
Let's pivot, Matt, and talk about the Queen's Plate. We've got we might
and
have
FYI, the feed is back. The horses are on the track.
Oh, fantastic. Wait, what happened? I'm still seeing a test pattern. I might have to refresh over here. Good.
They're milling around behind the gate. I would imagine will be loaded within the next 2 minutes or so.
Okay, you know what? Producer Craig, I hope you're paying attention. Let's do a question or two while we get this Kentucky Downs race off. Then we'll hit Queen's Plate, and then we'll then we'll bring in my buddy Declan Rix to talk about
Perfect.
these urine races from Ireland. Here's a good one. Oh, my man Harry. Are people forgetting Maximum Security in the Classic? He's had the best preparations, in Harry's opinion, for the race. I think just meaning, running well against older horses. We're talking about the 3-year-olds, but of course they're running in restricted races. What do you think about Max's chances for the big one, Matt?
I think you have to look at him as a key player, as a main contender in that race. My only rebuttal would be, and I understand, it's so funny. It's people fall in love with horses, myself included. He's the most polarizing horse, bar none. There's no two ways around it. He's the most polarizing horse. When you say something that is not necessarily a knock, people immediately take it as a knock and say, "Oh, you're downplaying him. You're saying he's got no chance." No, all I'm saying is the Pacific Classic, that could not have played out any better for him.
Correct.
And when you look and see who ran second to him that day, and I think Mark Glatt is very, very sharp. I think he's a great trainer. Either Mark Glatt's been wrong all along, and they've campaigned Sharp Samurai on turf, and he should have been on dirt, or, and I think more likely than not, wasn't a great race. And somebody had to run second. The other big horses didn't show up. And Maximum Security, he ran fast. I'm not downplaying that. And I think that my favorite thing about him is his will to win. He wants to beat you.
Yes, he's
tough. I want to know what happens against better horses. That's all.
To me, he just held serve. I'm not going to hold it against him.
Correct.
I'm not going to overpraise him for the Pac Classic because the race was run ideally to suit. He produced a good time, but I agree. In form terms, the race, I just feel like we still don't fully have the questions answered about him. But on the square right now, I mean, you can't make him far from the favorite in that race. So good on Harry for pointing that out. They're off at Kentucky Downs. Why don't we if we have one more question, Craig, we can do that while this race runs. And here we go from Gerald. Why didn't Paco go forward at the start when he clearly had the lead? Yeah, I mean, he didn't go forward because to me, he was too busy, presumably taking a right turn to try to take out Tislaw, ends up with Honor AP as collateral damage. Again, I mean, I think it's a very different race. I think if Paco just rides New York Traffic, Authentic has has a bit more competition on the early for the early lead. Tislaw gets a smoother passage through. I think Tislaw probably wins if Paco just rides his horse. That's just how I see it. Where are you? Because I know reasonable minds can disagree, Matt. Where are you on the whole intentionality of the Paco Lopez ride on New York Traffic? And do you have any additional answer to Gerald's question?
Well, first things first. I mean, it looked bad out of the gate. There's no two ways around that. The only thing I'll say, if you're trying to make the case the other way, is that go back and watch just before the gate break. New York Traffic was a little bit restless. He's throwing his head about. So maybe he broke outward. I don't know. But I think if it were any other rider, we wouldn't be saying this. But Paco has a history of this, right, wrong, or indifferent. So I think it's fair to bring that up as a question. The only thing I'll say is, and this is full-blown red boarding, and I didn't even pick the horse to win the race. Go back to after the Haskell, many people were saying Authentic can't get the distance because New York Traffic was coming at the end. I long maintained the talent gap is massive compared to between those two horses. It was an optical illusion because Authentic got very goofy out there. New York Traffic, I don't think, is in the same category as any of those horses. I think at best he's sort of a mid-pack, grade 3 type 3-year-old. I don't mean that as a knock, but to look at him and say, had he been ridden differently, he potentially factors or compromises Authentic. I think we're trying to make too much out of something that it's not. I think he's a decided notch below some of the best, and I will stand by that until proven otherwise.
Looks like it comes 8-9 at Kentucky Downs. We'll see what effect that has on the leaderboard. Were you watching it all? Did yours have any trip or any excuse to speak of, or
a little bit wide? I think she ended up 5th, maybe. And again, I'm bad about this because I have such a hard time getting any kind of feel for Kentucky Downs, and it's not because of the late change as far as where the camera goes, but it's just such an odd track to try. She finished 6th. I have just such a hard time figuring out who's going to take to the track and who's not, because you have that period turning for home where they actually run uphill a little bit and then they go down the dip, and it's just if there's anything that I could possibly get better at, I mean, there's plenty, don't get me wrong, but this track in particular, and I don't know how I will, because it's been how many years and I still can't figure it out. But I love watching it. It's just I've struggled mightily there.
Okay, here's our program for the rest of the show. We're going to take a minute now. We'll talk Queen's Plate. We'll come back. We'll recap contest. We'll let you go, Matt, and then we will bring in Declan Rix to talk about these win and you're in races. This is much-watched stuff in Ireland on Saturday and Sunday for folks who are going to be playing the Breeders' Cup. These will become key form lines, very likely, for a number of races. But right now, let's talk about the Canadian Classic that we're going to see on Saturday. It's the Queen's Plate. Obviously, very different atmosphere this year with no fans in attendance. This is one of those races that's as much of a social event as it is an important horse race, but it is still an important horse race, and it's one where I keep gravitating back towards the favorite. Now, this is a horse based on the appearance running through the lane the last day, Clayton. I was looking to want to oppose, but the more I look at the race and the more talking on the show that I posted earlier today, where we went through all 13 races on the Queen's Plate card, talking to Ernie Perry about how much better this one has trained, I feel like it's an example of a horse that has accomplished plenty doing things the wrong way and is now starting to do things the right way. That, to me, might be enough for him to improve, continue to improve, and go past all of these. I'll be price sensitive here. If this is a horse that starts getting all the attention, I cannot have as a heavy favorite. But I could also see this one drifting to the likes of 5-2, and I think I could get interested there. I'm very intrigued to see what happens with Clayton. I'm open to creative possibilities. I have one myself I'll throw out in a minute or two. But Matt, who's your pick in this year's Queen's Plate?
This is going to be this is good because you and I will differ vehemently here. I just hated the plate trial as a whole. And perhaps it is a matter of this horse. If this is the case, and it very well could be, of him doing everything wrong and now he's put it all together, then that's a very dangerous proposition where he could be ready to fire a big shot. But that was why I didn't like him. He was very keen early in that plate trial, never changed leads. And I kind of looked at it and said, he got by on talent alone. Can you afford to do that against what I think is a better field here on Saturday afternoon? So my opinion was to try to fade that race as a whole, right, wrong, or indifferent. We'll find out after it's run. I had narrowed it down to 2. And I'm ultimately going to go with the horse I think is going to be more forward. I'm going to the far outside with Tecumseh's War. That's the 14 horse. Took on older horses in the most recent start, was loaded up, basically was in the pocket for the majority of the trip, was loaded rounding the far turn, couldn't find anywhere to go, eventually went to the inside, looked like it was going to end up being the winning move, got run down late by a decent older horse who came back and earned an 81 in the next start. I love the gallop out. Gallop out was very strong, and I can't overstate that in these 1.25 mile races. I want horses who look like they're going to be finishing at the end as opposed to really kind of grasping for air. And if you believe the Timeform US pace projector, there's a chance this horse makes the lead. They have it as a fast pace. I'm not convinced that it's going to be so fast, but I do think Tecumseh's War is forwardly placed throughout. I don't think the distance is the thing that gets this horse. Perhaps he's not good enough, but he's 12-1 on the line. I was torn between he and Merview, the other filly coming out of the Woodbine Oaks. Ultimately, I went 14-2.
Tell me about why you think Merview is going to be able to reverse form with Curlin's Voyage.
And that's the dangerous piece. I mean, she's been defeated by her on the square on 2 different occasions. To me, going back and watching that Woodbine Oaks, I thought in the grand scheme of things, they both had a beautiful trip coming from the back of the pack, given the fast pace that was signed on. And Merview was actually following Curlin's Voyage throughout. The difference was Curlin's Voyage was able to get through on the far turn where the hole tightened up just enough where Merview had to wait. She eventually was able to find another seam, and when she was produced, not only did she finish well, but she galloped out about 1 mile in front of everybody else. So to me, the distance is going to work to her advantage, and I think you're probably going to need that to be the case if she's going to reverse the tables on the other filly, Curlin's Voyage. But having said that, I don't know that she needs to come from 100 out of it. You take a look at these workouts recently, I'm going to venture a guess and say she's a little bit closer to the pace than maybe she was in that Woodbine Oaks. So that's where I went. Really, there's only 4 horses I used. I went 14-2, 10-13.
14-2, 10-13. My goofy one for underneath, a horse who was talked about for this race before he ever stepped on a racetrack. And it's an appropriate one given the hat that you're wearing, Matt. Still a maiden, but Belichick is talented. I felt like had a little bit of a trip excuse last time to at least explain the still being a maiden. Granted, winning a maiden doesn't exactly put you normally in form consideration for a race like this. I just feel like this horse is going to be finishing, is bred for 1.25 miles. Belichick, I think, can sneak up into third or fourth and get a little piece here, even though I'm, the speed figure player in me thinks I'm insane even saying that out loud. But I feel like this is a spot where if ridden the right way, this horse could get at least a little piece. Now, I know you're with me as a Patriots fan as far as a hunch play goes. Can you see this for underneath if you squint, or am I talking crazy here?
No, I mean, I think the case for a horse like this you laid out very well, where you're looking at it from a pedigree standpoint. This 1.25 miles is not going to be any sort of an issue. A lightly raced horse who, by all accounts, has been well meant, and they've thought well of this one for a while. If you take a step forward here with the added ground, and also go back to the running line of that most recent start, it was against older horses and made the move into the teeth of the pace if you're a fan of the Timeform US pace figures. So that, to me, I want to give you a little bit of credit there, saying, all right, you couldn't quite seal the deal, but you made the move into the worst part of it anyway. I don't think it's necessarily as bad as it looks. And you're right. If you, again, that goes back to the idea, if you're a figure player, horse is too slow. But if you get a little bit creative, and you have to get creative in these things, it's not always black and white. There's a little bit of gray. I could see this horse getting a piece of this thing. It would be a stunner if the horse won, but I could certainly see underneath.
Yeah, that's my idea. Clayton, the fillies, and mix Belichick in there somewhere. And just to clarify, I don't disagree with you one bit about the ugliness of the last Clayton run, but I think there are reasons for this one to improve. By in Ernie Perry, I trust when it comes to the Clocker report up at Woodbine. He did endorse how Clayton has looked since, not doing the same funny head carriage bit and just looking a little bit more professional. It might be enough for me. I obviously don't love that this horse is the favorite when you have to do something so different than what's been done in the past. But that's where I'm going. And I definitely take the point that so many sharp players we've spoken with on the various shows have landed on Merville, including your strong case for her, Matt. So that's another one under consideration. Okay. We have results here in the contest. We'll do those. We'll get you out of here, Matt, and then we still got some time to talk about Breeders' Cup winning you're in action. We saw a bit of a shakeup here, no surprise, with the 10-1 winning. 5 players advanced to the qualifier on Saturday. Jason Osterman, Michael Webb, Gordon Larson, Michael Samich. Good to see his name back up there. He's had great success in these Horseplayer Happy Hour events, and we've had him on the network a couple times. He's done a great job over on Redboard Rewind. And then Benjamin Bachuk, your buddy, or our buddy,
Brother Ben.
But Brother Ben, who you've known for quite some time now. Good to see his name up there as well.
Absolutely. Again, this is the beautiful thing about these Horseplayer Happy Hours, where so many players get involved. It's a nice way to get yourself into the Saturday qualifier on the cheap. And again, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, and you're putting forward to a good cause. So good for Brother Ben. Hopefully he's got some big luck on Saturday afternoon.
All right, Matt, we're going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your happy hour. Enjoy the rest of your night. Any plugs you want to throw in there before you get out of here?
No plugs. The only thing I'll say is next race at Kentucky Downs, again, coming from the guy who can't make heads or tails of it. The horse I landed on is 39-1, the 12. So do with that what you will.
As hot as you've been, I'm not leaving the thing out. 39-1 for Matt in the next to Kentucky Downs. Cheers, buddy. We will see you very soon. Matt Bernier Show. Check it out, download it, rate it, review it, and we'll see you on here next week.
You got it, man. Talk to you.
All right. Good stuff from Matt as ever. And now we're going to bring in a guest who's be joining our airwaves for the first time, but somebody I love hanging out with. I've had the chance to hang out with him at various race courses around the UK, most notably Royal Ascot. We'll get him here in a minute. I'll wait to do the proper intro until I see his smiling face across from me. I'm sure producer Craig working on that right now. I told him to get in the spirit of this happy hour thing and have a beer. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if he followed up with that. Because we ended up going on a little bit early, and I've been doing all these other things. I never got my beer today, and I didn't want to be a jerk and text my bartender friends downstairs to bring me alcohol. So I'm actually the rarest of rare things for me, a completely dry Horseplayer Happy Hour. But don't worry, I'll be making up for it after. We've got more work to do. Going to be working on a Stronach 5 podcast for that bet tomorrow. That'll be a lot of fun. And I'm also going to be doing a runner by runner guide for the Queen's Plate. So if you're interested in any more Queen's Plate information. We've got so much stuff happening on the network right now. We've got a go through of all 13 races with, as mentioned, Ernie Perry, the clocker, and Doug McPherson, very respected handicapper. We're going to have a racing pick show with deep dives into those races. We're going to be talking about the Queen's Plate with Jason Pertuando, and also talking about the Grade 2 Canadian with Ashley Mayu. That'll be up soon. So lots of good stuff going on as far as that goes. And it's going to be any minute now. I'll wait to hear if we've had some sort of delay, but hoping that producer Craig is ready to put our buddy Declan in there. Let me make sure he's seen the link. It was emailed to him, so he should have it. Have you seen the link? I will text him right now. And yeah, we got things got thrown off schedule with that Kentucky Downs race being delayed, but any second now we'll be good to go and ready to rock and roll with that. Matt Bernier's pick in this next race 9 at Kentucky Downs. Just looking at the odds board, I'm assuming I think he said the 12 again comes back a $1 double of 308.50. So hopefully for Matt and his fans have a chance to get a big run from this one. I've been so busy looking at what's going on up at Woodbine that I haven't over the weekend, that I did not thoroughly look at this Kentucky Downs card, but certainly interesting stuff over there. And we remind folks again to check out about that Kentucky Downs betting challenge. You can find information on the Breeders' Cup website or over at Kentucky Downs. And here he is. There's the man popping in from his. I assume he's in London. We'll get the details on that in a minute. But a terrific form study expert. You got to follow him on Twitter. I've seen him when he's in very good form, and by that I mean both picking winners and also making all kinds of friends at Car Park 2 over at Ascot. My friend Declan Rix. Declan, how are you, my man?
P, I'm good. How are you, sir?
Things are very good. Are you in London right now, or did you end up heading back to Ireland to wait this thing out?
No, I'm still in the UK, still in London. Yes, so waiting for our friend COVID to blow over so we can get back to reality.
Oh my goodness! When was the last time you were at a race course?
Ooh, last time I was at a race course was the Cheltenham Festival in March.
Yeah, me as well. I left. I think I caught the first 2 races on the Thursday, and then got the next plane back to the USA. And I do miss it. I do miss it desperately. That's right. I saw you on opening day. We had a semi-socially distanced drink in what's that bar called where we were?
That is. There's a couple there. It wasn't Quivers. No, is it the Arkle Bar?
The Arkle Bar at Cheltenham. Good stuff. All right, my friend. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show. I don't know if you saw, there was a power outage at Kentucky Downs, and everything got pushed back. So that's why I'm coming to you later than we said. But I want to get your thought on these Breeders' Cup Challenge races happening in Ireland this weekend. I know you're a tremendous student of form over there. I've seen you in action, giving out loads of winners at Ascot, etc. Very curious what you think about this year's Champion Stakes, and also curious if you think there could be some cross-pollination, perhaps a horse or horses running in this one that might come over to our shores for this year's Breeders' Cup. But we'll start with the most important question. Who do you think is going to win?
Well, look, I think, I know you guys in the States are big figure players. And if you're a big figure player here in terms of horses' overall rating and speed figures and all that, Goya simply wins this. And it's that simple. So, but of course, horse racing is never as straightforward as that. But look, if he turns up with his A game, he's going to be very, very hard to beat. And what we've seen this year, he's just morphed into a monster, both physically and on the track. Everything about him is world class now. He's got an official rating of 130. And, horses with those kind of numbers are just gold dust. It's kind of scary when you think Frankel got to 140. But this guy is on 130, and he is a world-class horse, no doubt about it.
Do you think there's a world in which, have you heard any stories? This is a horse that wants firm ground. There is a certain logic that they might try to make a run. in the USA. What do you think will be? Let's say he does the business the way he's supposed to. What do you think the next stop will be?
Well, to be honest, I think Godolphin are eyeing up the Breeders' Cup this year, the Longines Turf. It looks like they're going to skip the Arc run this year. They went to the Arc last year, and he was very disappointing, but he got into a bit of a speed duel this day on near heavy ground from quite a way out, and that on the back of a big figure run in Germany as his prep run. I think when you combined all of that, it was no surprise that he flopped basically. But this year he's been phenomenal, and because they're not going to, it looks like they're not going to go to the Arc. I do think Godolphin and his trainer Charlie Appleby, it looks like they are eyeing up the Breeders' Cup this year, which is great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's that's a storyline to root for as far as I'm concerned. That'd be fabulous to see. Declan, let's move on to the Coolmore America Justify Matron Stakes. This one's a win and you're in for the Maker's Mark Filly and Mare Turf. What do you think is going to happen here?
This is a competitive race now, Pete. Ballydon and the Coolmore partners, or the lads as they are affectionately known in this part of the world, they've got 3 or 4 horses in here, and from a tactical point of view, I think they're going to dominate the race. They've got a horse in here, Lovelocket, that Aidan O'Brien trains, that's going to run in first-time blinkers with a jockey called Michael Hussey riding. And Michael Hussey is usually one of the kind of pace jockeys that O'Brien looks to set up races for other horses. Aidan's got a horse in here called Peaceful. She was a winner of the Irish 1000 Guineas this year. But it looks like Aidan's going to have a fight on his hands with his own son, Donica, who's going to try and take the prize away from him, because Donica is running a filly here called Fancy Blue, who has been sensational for him this year. Donica's only been training full-time for a year. He's already won a French Classic, and he's won another Group 1 with this filly in the Nassau Stakes at Glorious Goodwood. So it looks like Aidan as a stallion has stamped his stock well.
Where if you think that's the way to go? Do you think Donica will be upsetting the old man on the day if I held your feet to the fire?
Yeah, it looks like I think they're going to tee the race up perfectly for Fancy Blue. As she's dropping back from 10 furlongs down to a mile. Leopardstown is a stiff mile, but it looks like they're going to go strong here and help bring her stamina into play. If you do want horse that is maybe a little bit doubtful stayer, but is certainly all priced. There's a filly in here called Valeria Missalina, trained by Jessica Harrington. This filly is coming here on the back of a career best run, also at Glorious Goodwood. She's got a top pedigree. She's a half sister to a horse called Pinchek, who was also very good for Jessica Harrington. He was a Group 2 performer. The trip is a little bit of a doubt, but she's bred to stay and she's settling better now. And the strong gallop, while it's a bit of a catch-22 in that it'll test her stamina, it'll also help her to settle. And I think you'll get a big run for your money. She's 16-1 here at this on this side of the pond. To my eye, even though the trip is a little bit of a doubt, those odds are just too generous not to play. So if you're looking for a value play, that's the way I go. But it looks like obviously Fancy Blue is the most likely winner.
Sounds like a very interesting contest. And that's a great point about when you have those kind of questions, but you're getting compensated in price. That's when you can take that. That's when you feel better about taking those kind of leaps of faith. Leopardstown's a course that I found can offer many good pointers to horses that will do well in the USA in terms of the way the class transfers, and also I think in terms of the configuration. Do you see any of these runners? Have you heard any stories about any of these runners having the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf on the radar should things go well on Saturday?
I haven't heard anything yet, but it's been such a strange season with COVID. All these horses are probably 2 runs further back when they would be in a normal year. So I think in this part of the world, especially with the kind of smaller trainers, they're just taking things one step at a time. But the filly that I've actually put there, the Jessica Harry, if she could really do well around a track like Keeneland there over the mile, and she's going to travel for fun. She's progressing in. If the ground came up any decent, it'll help her allow her to get home. But we haven't heard anything yet in this race that has nailed their colours to the mast in terms of going to the Breeders' Cup. But it's a win in your in race. So, if you win here, that's maybe half the decision sorted for you.
And you make a great point about the horses being behind where they would be in a typical year. That might help not just the Breeders' Cup to attract them, but maybe even their chances. I think of Enable the other year coming here with the interrupted preparations and still having gas in the tank, petrol left in the tank after the ARC. I wonder if you might see that situation. Obviously, the travel makes it maybe a year where it's a little less appealing in some regards for horses to ship. But then you think about the money that can be made with horses that still have something left in the tank. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more European participation than I was initially thinking. Does that sound like a reasonable hypothesis to you, Declan?
No, absolutely. And I do. The Breeders' Cup is obviously going to be held in Keelan this year, and I've got to pick with Keelan because the last time we raced here, we sent two superstars out there, and Legatissimo and Golden Horn, and both were turned over. And the reason I think and the reason they were turned over, I think, is in part because they had long, tough seasons in Europe. And not that it was an afterthought, because the Breeders' Cup is a fantastic meeting. And, there's massive prize money and the experience is just second to none there for owners. But I just think they probably had one race too many this side of the pond. And, you can't go to America. Some horse players in this part of the world, they don't rate the form as highly, but you need to go to America to face these horses in their own backyard. You need to be right. You need to be sharp from the gate. You need to be on your toes. You need to travel well. You need to do all those things. And you still need to be good enough.
Great stuff. Let's talk about the KPMG Champions Juvenile Stakes on Saturday. What's your view here? Yeah,
this is quite an open race. I think it's a little bit more open than the betting suggests. The favourite here is another Jessica Harrington horse. Is a horse called Cadillac. And if you get the chance to see this horse's his debut win when he broke his maiden, he won by 9 lengths over 7 furlongs at Leopardstown. It was one of the early kind of juvenile performances of the season. He's a son of Lope de Vega, who is a sire I think you guys in the States are getting a little bit more accustomed to. I think his newspaper record is she's Lope de Vega, I think, is she?
Indeed.
Yeah, so he's a top class sire, and even this side of the pond again, we've seen Coolmore kind of going in, looking at that kind of blood as well with him. So he's a sire on the up. The only thing I'd say with Cadillac is he looks a little bit short in the betting to me. He's around a 15-8, 2-1 shot, and the reason he's just a little bit short is he's got quite a pacey pedigree on the distaff side, and he's stepping up a furlong here to 8 for to a mile basically. And Leopardstown, it can, when they go quick, it can stretch stamina. So the horse I would look to for you guys to have a look at is Sir O'Brien horse, but Aiden, it looks like could potentially be pushed to the side again here, because it's Donica again, who looks like a serious contender with a horse called Ando Vici. This son of Australia, a lovely big long striding fluent moving sort. He needs to up his form. But it just looks to me, Donica is a little chip off the old block. He's bringing this horse along slowly. He hasn't got a race to run at pace in yet. And I think if he does get a race to run at with pace, it's going to bring in that stamina that he has. But Donica's already on record as saying this could be his Derby horse for next year. So he's clearly showing him plenty at home. And even if they don't go that quick, he's probably blessed with enough turn of foot to challenge the market leader here. The slight negative potentially is he's drawn and won. And if you miss a beat at Leopardstown, if you miss the beat here and you fall back behind at the 1 box is a death trap, because you're just not getting through up the straight. So the 1 box is a little bit of a worry, but for a big horse, a horse with a long stride, he's got a little bit of tactical speed. So I'm hoping once he jumps out well, he might take a little bit of beating.
Let's move on to the Curragh on Sunday, starting with the Derrinstown Stud Flying 5 Stakes. This one a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. What do you think?
Yeah, look, this is I can guess at the best of times, but I won't insult people's intelligence by guessing enough here. Unfortunately, we don't have the decks through yet, but it's a hugely competitive race. Obviously, it's another win in your in race, and there really is a story horse in here, and his name is Make a Challenge. He's trained by a guy called Dennis Hogan. He's a small trainer, Dennis Hogan, but he's a trainer with a serious upward trajectory. His career is going the right way. This horse started last season with Dennis Hogan, rated 66, and he finished the campaign running 50 group British champion, rated 111. So, he recently retired and he's now concentrating on training full time. And this is probably the story horse of the race. Small connections, all trainer. I'm sure if he wins this race, they will take up the offer. Yeah, we did. I could hear you, but you obviously couldn't hear me, which is not a bad thing, maybe.
We got not at all. You've been doing fantastic. I mean, recap very quickly, because we were obviously you were a bit in and out. We were getting a good case on your view on the Flying Five. But recap that selection real quick, and then let's move on to the Moigler and get you out of here while the getting is good. Did you hear that, Declan?
Cool. Yeah, look, I don't think I have a selection yet because we just haven't got the decks through yet, but the story race is Make a Challenge.
Very cool. And I imagine it's similar. No decks yet for the... Yep, we've got you. No decks yet for the Moigler stud, but that's the winning unit for the Juvenile Fillies turf. Any horses you're particularly paying attention to in there? We may have lost our man again. If you can hear me, Declan, we'll give you. Let's see if you can pop back in. And a quick thought on the Moigler stud before we get out of here. Yeah, a quick thought on our final win.
Yeah, the Moigler stud stakes looks like it's going to be dominated by the O'Brien brothers. So look, Aidan again has proved probably to be too good of a stallion himself, and he's not going to have it easy this weekend. His two sons, Donncha and Joseph, dominate the betting here with two fillies. Donncha trains a filly called Shayla, daughter of Galileo, who's out of a Homecoming Queen, a 1,000 guineas winner of yesteryear, and Joseph trains a horse called Pretty Gorgeous, who was over 500,000 guineas Tats 1 purchase last year. She's a filly by Lawman. These two, they have the best form on offer, Pete. They've clashed twice this season. One in the Silver Flash Stakes on good ground, where Shale was the winner, and the other time in the Debutant Stakes on very soft ground, where Pretty Gorgeous was the winner. It looks like the ground at the Curragh this weekend is tracking to be good. So just at I think you're getting 3-1 about Shale, and you're getting even money about Pretty Gorgeous, just with the ground likely to be on the firmer side compared to the last time they clashed. I would just give, at the prices, Donncha O'Brien's Shale the value pick in the race.
Feel like either of those are likely to come over for Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf if they have success?
Again, nothing has been said, but I do think Shale could be a filly who could adapt to America. She's not overly big. She's got a top class pedigree, but she's got gate speed, which you obviously need taking on you guys in the States. I think as long as the ground maybe didn't go soft at Keeneland, I think she could go well.
Okay. I put in that little close in case we stitch this together in a certain way. But it's now time to thank everybody who appeared on this show. So that includes Matt Bernier and Declan Rix, who you can find on Twitter at Hawkwing2002. We'll also thank producer Craig, our friends at the Breeders' Cup, horseplayers.com, etc. Really was fun being here with you for this most unusual Horse Players Happy Hour. But again, at least the technical issues this time around weren't my fault. This show's been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.